guys, and welcome to Faewood. This is the dragon headpiece that I created for my costume. I thought it would be a perfect way to top off the rest of the costume. Now, I had to create this with very little time, so it was a little rushed, if I'm honest. So there's some things that I did that if I was going to redo it, I'd do differently, and if I had more time, I may have done them differently as well at the time. But hopefully you guys can see that and create something knowing what I know now. So of course I started with the foil. This was just an easy way to build something up quickly, and it's super lightweight for the head. And I wanted to make a thick band shape that I could build the rest of the headpiece onto. So I worked out the size that I wanted. I was going to be wearing a wig. I didn't actually end up wearing the wig that I was going to wear, but so I made it a little larger to really compensate for the extra hair that was going to be on my head. That being said, it still worked okay. It didn't clip onto my head as well without the wig, but that's okay. So I decided to make it a bit of a dragon crown, and I wanted to put a dragon tail on it as well because I thought that'd be kind of fun. And I decided to make some nice big points at the front. So you can see that I've used the foil to sculpt those points on the front of the headpiece, and then I'm bending the rest of the foil around the piece because it needs to, you need to do that to make it hold on. Otherwise, you can use hot glue if you're wanting to just make the point itself and glue that on. But it is a little bit stronger if you have extra that you can wrap around the rest of the foil. Now you might remember these metal spikes that I've shown and used for the dragon skull that I have on my shoulder. I also used them for this headpiece. I thought they'd be perfect to make really precise looking spikes at the front of the crown. And I had two sizes, so I've used 4 of the larger size and 2 of the smaller size. I did share these in a haul, so feel free to go and check that out if you want to see more about these spikes. Now, this is leather offcuts that I have in my stash, and I realised not everyone's going to want to use leather or has leather. It's just something I already had on hand, so I thought I may as well use it rather than waste it. You could use like a craft foam and paint the craft foam. It would do a similar thing. It's nice to have a little bit of thickness, which is why a craft foam I think could work. Or you could use some sort of vinyl type, faux leather. You could actually use clay as well, but I just didn't want to use that much clay on it, and I had this leather there already. So rather than sculpting all the different scales out of clay, I thought it'd be easier to cut them out of the leather. So before I start sticking on scales, I realised I wanted to make some wings to sit on top of the headpiece and make them look like dragon wings sprouting from my head. So I used this wire. This is just like a fence wire or a garden wire. Of course you can use craft wire. Anything that's nice and stiff and sturdy would be good for this. I went for Kato polyclay. Now I went for this because I looked into it, and this is apparently one of the strongest, or if not the strongest, clays. And I would agree with that, but it is really friggin' hard to work with, so just bear that in mind. Warming this clay up was quite difficult, and I don't have a pasta machine. If you're a poly clay worker, you probably have a pasta machine, and maybe in the future I'll get one. And a pasta machine, it's just using the poly clay through one of the pasta machines to warm it up. A lot of people use those, and it's a great way to get the clay conditioned to work with it. So what I needed to do was to form this clay around the wire. The wire is more of an armature. What I did find though is I really wished that I had either put something on the ends of these pieces of wire, like a stopper, so that it wasn't so sharp to cut through the clay, or I actually formed a bit of wire around the ends of each of those wing joints, I guess. I don't know what you call them. Something at the end, just to stop the clay from wanting to come off of the wire and like the wire piercing through the clay. That was a major issue when I was doing this. The wire just kept piercing through the clay because like the wire itself was still bendable and I was still trying to mold it. It moved a bit too much. So you could either use something that doesn't bend at all, like very, very strong armature wire or something else, or you could just, again, form something on the end to buffer that wire from wanting to stick through the clay. It did work okay though. And I've used this little tool. I've got these wax carving tools that I use for clay, and I thought it would make sort of like scale shapes to press it in and make those shapes along the wings. Now this does need a fair bit of time to bake in the oven. Follow the instructions on the pack. I think I did it for about half an hour just to get it really nice and set. And I formed it around cups, like glasses and stuff, while it was in the oven so that it had a nice curve to it. I didn't show that, obviously. And then I've got excess wire, as you could see there, that I formed around and then used some hot glue to hold it in place. Now I'm using this Boyle's Craft Glue, which is a tacky sort of glue instead of something like a PVA. This has, grip to it instantly, which is perfect for stuff like this so that you don't have to worry about things sliding off while it dries. And yeah, so I had to cut so many of these scales. You've got no idea. I thought, oh yeah, this will be a nice quick way to work up a dragon headpiece. No. This takes a buttload of time. It really does. You do have to strap yourself in and be ready to cut yourself some scales. Now, one thing I would do as well, if I was doing this again, would be to paint the foil before putting the scales on, because I figured I could maybe fill in any gaps afterwards, but that's a lot harder. I would recommend just doing a quick coat of paint. You don't even have to make it perfect, but just having that bit of coating so the silver isn't too obvious if it does peek out. Also, do this in sections. So if you put a bit of glue on, just put small bits at a time and then put some scales on. I also was liking to overlap the glue a little bit at times just to give extra strength, and really trying to work out the best way to put the scales so they were all sort of going in the same direction. As you can see on those spikes, all the scales are pointed in the same direction and then overlapping as I move down the spikes. Now I cut my scales all different sizes, and I liked that. It was a little bit more natural looking to me, but I know some people love symmetry, and by all means you could make all of the scales the same if you wanted to. I do think on parts where it goes to a point, it is worth having some smaller scales at least though, like the tail and the spikes at the front. But yeah, I just hand drew these and cut them out, knowing full well they were different sizes. So you can see I used a bit of wire to wrap the like hair clips and things onto this so that it had a way to attach to my head. So I've got just a really cheap brass headband and some little hair combs to help attach it. You could use a variety of different things to attach and help it clip on, like actual clips. You could surround it with combs. It just depends on how you want to put this into your hair, really. I did have a little bit of trouble, to be honest. I've got very fine hair, and when I did decide to get rid of the wig, which was a last minute decision, I needed to add a couple more clips to make it really stick to my head. And even then, through the night, it did tend to go a bit lopsided at times. So just keep that in mind. Now, it was all looking a little too perfect for my liking, and I don't like that at all. I like something looking aged, antiqued, from another world. So I did go over this with a wash of like black paint. I really watered this down. And then I did sponge it off as well to keep some of the red from the leather showing through. Now I went over that with some extra red because I had lost some of that colour when I did that wash. It was grabbing to the leather a little bit unevenly. And this just helped to add some more colour, that rich burgundy colour in there. And a bit of dry brushing of the grey for the wings because the all of the detail was lost after I added the black enamel paint on there. If you guys watch my videos, you know I've got a huge tin of this black enamel paint, which is why it keeps coming out for various craft projects. So to finish this off and to really tie it into the rest of the costume, which has a lot of bronzy tones and gold tones in it, I have Art Alchemy wax, and I'm just applying it with my finger. But what I am trying to do, and it wasn't perfect by any means, but I am trying to focus this onto the ends of each of the scales. I'm not really trying to cover everything fully. I am just really touching over each scale to give each one of the scales a bronze look towards the point of each of those scales there. Now to add some additional depth to the colour, I've got a gold, the same thing, it's sort of a gold version of it. This is a rubbing wax. It's treasure gold, and I've used this on the very tips. So it's not quite a precise application, I'll be honest, with your finger. If you've got more time, you could definitely do this a lot more perfectly, possibly by doing the scales before you put them on even. And then finished with an eye, a dragon eye that I got from eBay. So this is the finished headpiece, guys. I hope you've enjoyed watching this tutorial and it's given you some inspiration for making your own dragon headpiece. Stay tuned for the goblin ball images to come and my full costume. Subscribe if you want to see more of that, and for the rest of you, I'll see you next time in Faewood. Bye guys.